Hello.
Hi there. So welcome to this live stream. This is the second one of the Caring for Vulnerable Children course. If you're watching us live and because we're slightly behind schedule, but so apologies if you have joined in live, but hopefully you're linked with us now. If you're watching a recording, then you'll be wondering what I'm talking about because you won't realise any of that. But, so we'll start with the introduction again. I think by week 4, most people will know who we are. My name's Graham McPhee. I'm based here at the University of Strathclyde.
And my name's John Paul Fitzpatrick. I'm an honorary research fellow here at the University of Strathclyde also.
Okay, so thanks very much for joining us. As I say, we're now 4 weeks into the course, so two-thirds of the way through. As is always the case, the material is prompting lots of comments, lots of discussion, lots of engagement. It's really interesting to read across the different comments and different people's reactions to the material.
Yeah, it's great to see such strong levels of engagement throughout the course and the way that you're all supporting each other. And as always, there's always that huge amount of interest and anxiety and questioning about Billy's story as it unfolds. So, but much more of that as we traverse through our itinerary today.
Yep. So we'll get 4 main things that we want to kind of cover today. One is in advance of this session, some of you have posted some questions, so we're going to start by responding directly to those questions, and it feels relevant at that point, just to kind of reinforce the bit about, we've been asked questions. We sit here, but we've got the luxury of being able to offer our opinion in relation to these questions. But a lot of this is contested. It's not an exact science, and we're sure that learners will have different experiences and different takes and some issues, and we would encourage people via the forums to keep the discussions going.
Yeah, keep challenging, keep asking questions, keep asking, and keep tweeting your comments and your views.
Yep.
And on that, shall we start? We've got a really interesting question here from Esther Cliento. Esther, thank you very much for your question. It's a really, really interesting one. And Esther's asking Graham if we could clarify the differences between child and youth care and social pedagogy. So what would your take be on that?
Okay, so thanks for that question, Esther. Now, we could literally take up the whole broadcast just talking about this because there's so much to talk about here. So we'll try and give a kind of concise answer, but point you towards there's various resources that you could look at that will kind of give you more information on this. Child and youth care and social pedagogy are 2 different we call them kind of frameworks, approaches, philosophies of childcare. And social pedagogy has its roots in mainland Europe. So social pedagogy would be kind of commonly experienced in countries such as Germany, Holland, Belgium, not limited to those countries at all, but those are some of the countries where the tradition, the practice of social pedagogy is most established. Child and youth care, by contrast, is North American, most particularly Canada and the United States. And I guess in a sense what it reflects as different countries and societies evolve, there's different ideas about the best way to look after and bring up children. So social pedagogy is the predominant way in a number of mainland European countries. Child and youth care is the predominant way and model in North America. And what we have I think begin to experience more in the UK, and certainly in the last 15 or 20 years, is I think we've become a bit more outward looking in terms of beginning to engage with, I would say, particularly, probably more social pedagogy in the first instance, but increasingly child and youth care. And from a UK perspective, us learning more about these approaches and thinking, what have they got? What have they got to add, and how can we learn and utilise from some of the ideas associated with social pedagogy and child and youth care? And certainly in a Scottish context, there's quite a significant engagement with social pedagogy now in the childcare sector.
Yeah, particularly because I think increasingly, and as a common theme running through our and your comments around austerity, services having to work together, working interprofessionally, teachers, youth workers, social workers, residential workers. And I suppose part of that interest may be driven by the desire to have professionals who are involved in child and youth care support have a common value base and an understanding of each other's strengths and weaknesses. And I suppose part of the appeal, part of the reason I'm really interested in social pedagogy is that consistent value base, the idea of a common core of interprofessional training, that no matter what setting you're working in, that you've got this common core, this common interdisciplinary professional training. Not easy for me to say, that actually informs practice, which must really kind of work to strengthen supporting children and families at the point of need when they've got that common language.
Yeah, and so to kind of connected in with that, it's certainly, and well, again, in Europe with social pedagogy and in North America with child and youth care, when practitioners become qualified and as social pedagogues or child and youth care workers, they can find themselves employed in a whole range of settings. It could be in a children's residential home, it could be more in kind of community-based services, it could be in a school, it could be in child protection services, it could be in a whole range of settings. And what John Paul's touching on there, the fact that when you begin to populate all these different parts of the service with people who've got a kind of common philosophy, underpinning values, training, education, then I think logic would dictate there's more chance of joined up working. There's more chances of different parts of the service linking with each other. And one of the criticisms that's often levelled at UK childcare services is that that's perhaps one of our kind of more problematic areas, and that perhaps education and health and childcare services don't always join up the way that we could. So certainly in a Scottish context, well, particularly in a Scottish context, I would say it's not to say it's not apparent in other parts of the UK, but a number of people pushing social pedagogy as this has got the potential to begin to give us that common language, that common understanding. Now, there's a link here as well. We will come back to this because one of the things that we want to talk about also is about your reactions to the theme of risk-averse practice. And one of the things that a number of people have been drawn towards social pedagogy is that it can be seen to challenge the UK kind of arguably overemphasis on risk and risk management, and social pedagogy, as you've learned this week, actually introduces the concept of risk competence and tries to turn that on its head by saying that our starting point should be that we need young people to be risk competent. And if that's our starting point, it doesn't negate risk management. That's obviously always part of the task, but it means that you go into it with a kind of different focus. So a number of people have been drawn towards social pedagogy for that. I think there's also a cross-fertilisation between child and youth care and social pedagogy. We begin to see those professions swapping ideas and realising that they've got many things in common. So
I suppose, and I would be really keen for everyone watching this to consider what is the dominant model of choice where you're situated across the globe. What different models are working? Is there a preferred one? Can you see strands of social pedagogy or child and youth care kind of permeating through? Do services and workers from different professions follow a kind of common strand? So yeah, do some investigation where you are and find out more and share your ideas across your comments.
Yep. So let's link this in. So thanks for that question, Esther, but let's link this answer into another question. We've got a question here from Faria Thomas, and Faria asks, do you have any tips or suggestions for workers who want to allow the children and young people they work with to take appropriate risks, but their organisation is risk averse? How do they get around it? Now, unfortunately, what we don't have is any kind of silver bullet here to kind of offer that. But I think what you're reflecting there, Faria, is a challenge, a frustration that many practitioners up and down the country experience, and that they feel the way that they would like to work with children and families and some of the things they would like to do with them, and they feel a bit sometimes caught up in kind of red tape and procedures and such like. And in the first instance, as as almost kind of simplistic as it might sound. I think that the first thing that we've got to be doing in an organisation such as this is constantly having conversations and keeping it on the agenda and keep talking about it, because if we're not actually questioning some of this, then we're never going to move anything on.
And I suppose one way around trying to move an organisation on that maybe for different reasons over time has become kind of stuck in its practice and is a bit more risk averse is to actually think through, well, how do we meaningfully involve young people's views in the design and the delivery of that service? What do young people think about the organisation? What do young people think about the policies, the procedures, the practice? And actually, what role do all staff and all stakeholders have to play in the shaping the organisation's policy and practice? But the views of young people are critical in terms of shaping and designing an effective service. After all, it's them that are at the heart of this as recipients of the service and the care that's around it. So that would potentially be one way around it. But of course, there has to be a willingness from the organisation to enable that to happen in the first place.
And then I think when we drill down a bit further, I know that often when I get into conversations with students or practitioners about this, when we talk about like trying to encourage organisations to be a bit less risk averse and to allow children and young people to experience things which are going to be developmentally beneficial for them, and we know that being exposed to appropriate and manageable risk is part of the developmental process. And actually, it can be argued when we don't do that, we're
damaging resilience.
We're not allowing young people to develop that risk competence. Linking back to social pedagogy, but I think sometimes the conversations here, when we talk about the activities, can get stuck around. And some of the examples I hear about is like going swimming, going up hills, climbing trees, etc. And we tend to focus perhaps overly on these physical activities, and these are important. And it's important that organisations don't just stop children doing everything and hide behind this is about keeping kids safe when it's not. It's about them just avoiding managing some of these situations. But I actually think those ones are easier to solve. I think some of the ones that are more challenging for organisations, especially when we get young people who get to adolescence, and it's about relationships. It's about kind of testing boundaries out, and about increased independence and beginning to engage. And some of the things that we know young people test out and engage with, and kind of different aspects that can be challenging. And I think organisations then, the notion of allowing young people to take appropriate and manageable risks becomes even more challenging for them.
Absolutely.
And I think those are some of the more difficult things. That it's easy to it's easier, I think, to encourage an organisation to change its policy around about bikes or swimming or these practical things. Kind of some of that more interpersonal stuff, I think, is kind of quite different. And no, just to kind of cite some examples, if you're a practitioner, say working in a residential unit, and young people kind of 16, 17, and kind of who's it appropriate for them to go out with, who's it appropriate for them to be in a relationship with, and then testing out, be it kind of drug, alcohol, kind of other aspects of relationships, safe sex, all these
even
kind of
who you can have friends and associations with. Absolutely.
And I think because to simply deny young people the chance to engage in all of that doesn't help them developmentally at all. And actually, you could argue quite the opposite is damaging them, because we're not giving them the opportunity to grow and test out when they're supported by people who provide kind of safety and safe relationships, and they're there to help them pick up the pieces.
And then when
things do go wrong,
and they transition into independence, maybe their own kind of bridging accommodation, haven't had that exposure to that managed risk, and then they're therefore unable to deal with their situations that they find themselves in.
So I think these are really challenging. But again, I think the starting point is about naming these challenges. And John Paul spoke about involving the children and young people. I think the other thing is about trying to, if we feel that organisations are risk averse, is that asking the question, who's this really protecting? Is this about us protecting the children and young people, or is this about the organisation almost kind of trying to cover its back and eliminating the possibility of things going wrong, because things will go wrong, and any of us in any given day make any number of mistakes, and if we deny people the opportunity to do that, now that's quite different from saying it should just be go and do what you want, and any risk is acceptable.
But
and
proportionate and managed risk, I think, is what you're talking about here.
And that's the professional task. So we need to challenge organisations if we think they've been risk averse to, is this truly in the best interest of the children and young people, and involving the children and young people in that conversation. So actually, let's change our running order, given that we're talking about this, and we've got another question, we'll come back to it, but we had some comments round about the theme of risk-averse practice this week, because this links nicely into this, because this was one of the kind of themes this week. So we'll get a couple of kind of comments, and we just want to kind of pick out a couple of bits. So I just want to start with it, kind of Sharon Bowie, kind of thanks for your comment, Sharon. And she said, I think until we move away from a blame culture, it's very difficult to see a way forward for professionals responsible for children. And the link I'm making, that this phrase kind of blame culture, I think it relates to Faria's question about that. If we've got organisations that are risk averse, and we've got organisations where there's a perception amongst the professionals there that if anything seemed to go wrong here, the starting point is going to be, how did that happen? You're to blame for that. That's not going to encourage workers to encourage young people to grow developmentally and test things out.
We have to role model. We have to actually pro-socially role model making mistakes. I mean, mistakes are how we learn. It's how we learn cognitively. It's all part of growing up. And if workers actually can't, in situations actually where judgments are made, and work with young people to say, well, actually, in dealing with situation X, yeah, I might have got that wrong, and actually role model and lift that, rather than actually trying to, because where you have that type of blame culture or risk aversion, it can lead to attempts to sweep things under the carpet. And in terms of where we're at with, many kind of national and international kind of outrages that have happened in the care and safety of children and young people where they've experienced abuse, then that type of culture has kind of kicks in, and organisations then work to protect themselves. So the more open and transparent we are and try and reduce that culture of blame, I think it's absolutely critical.
We need staff to feel supported. We need staff to feel that, and again, go back to some of the words you used about, it's not just encouraging young people to take risks for the sake of it, but assessed, proportionate risk. And if we can evidence that the decisions that we make were good, appropriate decisions, then sometimes when things go wrong, then that will be part of the learning process. But we need to move away from that blame culture. We need not to have, again, a phrase that Sharon used later in her post was that fear of recrimination. We need workers to feel supported. And linking into that, we got another comment here from Sylvia Scopio. So Sylvia, again, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly there. And she says, whilst risk assessments are very important, not all the possible risks can be covered, and therefore judgment too plays its part when unforeseen circumstances. And that word about judgment and professional judgment, and it's almost thinking back to what we were speaking about 2 weeks ago, and the 10 scenarios. What do you think is the most risky, etc. And none of this is an exact science, but when we are working with children and young people and trying to create situations where they can grow and develop and heal and form positive relationships, we've got to create the circumstances and opportunities for that to happen. By simply trying to eliminate all risk is in nobody's interest. And again, to repeat the point, actually it hinders development. When we start to do that, the system, when children end up in childcare services, if we do that, now we can almost see the system compounding one disadvantage with more by not providing the appropriate opportunities for growth and development.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's kind of vital. Sylvia, I would say yes, that we've got to be. It's based on sound professional judgment. So again, probably repeating that word of caution. This is us sitting here saying, or kind of throw all the risk assessment stuff out the window and don't think about it. It's got to be proportionate, it's got to be appropriate, and and what feels the right decision on one day might not feel the right decision another day, depending. And
that's professional judgment and making that call dependent on the circumstances and all the variables that, and just really taking it back to what is in the best interest of this child at this time.
So backing that up completely, Niall Calendar, Neil or Niall Calendar. So I'm probably not getting the pronunciation of your first name there correct. It's not a spelling I've seen before. So apologies for that. But I really the last part.
But mistakes are good. We just said that, so that is good.
Children need to learn how to deal with a bit of risk when growing up, or else they grow into adults that do not have the resilience needed to deal with situations. And then just picking up on what you said, and that's such an important point. So it's a really kind of good comment. And otherwise, Kirsty Agnew, Kirsty, thanks for your comment. She made the link to social pedagogy. I like the social pedagogy holistic approach, which seems to be more adaptable and less prescriptive. So I think that's linking to a previous answer about some people, especially in Scotland, I think have been attracted to some of the ideas associated with social pedagogy, because there's a bit of a worry about, are we becoming overly risk averse? And actually what social pedagogy is doing is giving practitioners a bit more license to say, this is good practice. This is in children's best interests, and this actually gives us the theoretical kind of backing and underpinning to engage in some of this.
Absolutely, and actually, one of the things that we know from working with children and young people is that increases in the young people's mental health declining from a UK perspective, and we know this is evidenced through the amount of referrals that there are for specialist mental health services and provision. But young people are increasingly reporting levels of stress and anxiety. And actually, if we don't start to work in a more proportionate and managed way towards risk and actually working on young people's mental health, earlier prevention of mental health challenges and issues, and creating that nurture and safety and support, I think, and this is a personal opinion, I am often one now, that we are sleepwalking our way to disaster. So this type of issue with blame and risk aversion, we've got to kind of try and have a good, proportionate and common sense approach to that.
Yeah. So let's link this into another theme this week: love. So with the presentation from Jenny Malloy, the conversation with Jenny, and if you've ever been lucky enough to hear Jenny speaking in person, you'll know how impressive a speaker she is and some of the ideas she's communicated. If you haven't, I would really encourage you to the stuff online, but equally if you could get the chance to see her speak in person, and she brings such a kind of gravitas to the discussion in terms of her own experiences and the way that she reflects on them now.
A real kind of raw, visceral, passionate description of the difference that people who cared for her in her life made to her, and using the term love in itself is one that's really, really interesting in professional circles. Is it okay to be discussing love?
So lots of comments about kind of people being bowled over by kind of hearing kind of Jenny talking. I'm saying you could try and hear her talk. We've got links to her books as well, and Hackney Child, and they could thoroughly recommend them. I picked up on a kind of couple of comments, because as John Paul says, actually even just the use of the word love, certainly in the UK context, in the childcare system, it's a real taboo. And some people would argue that the use of the word love has almost been kind of hijacked by the whole kind of child protection agenda. And again, we're not sitting here saying child protection isn't important. I mean, we wouldn't be so daft or naive as to say that. Of course not.
But taking aside as well, also I suppose deconstructing sexualizing love and love as unconditional regard and care and nurture and wanting the best for the children that you're working with as you would your own.
And what Jenny very powerfully reflects on is that sense of the people who she knew, the people that truly unconditionally cared for her, were there for her, the people that were going into bat for her, and however they communicated that, she knew. And I guess especially when working with kind of childcare students in this, and especially because I still come across a lot of students and some practitioners who express quite almost an aversion to the use of the word love. And I guess kind of one of the, trying to play devil's advocate, one of the questions often back to them: would you feel comfortable with any child who was subject to your service, especially over a period of time, if reflecting on it afterwards, they hadn't felt loved, they hadn't felt truly cared for? Because should we feel okay with children coming through the care system and not feeling loved, not feeling totally cared for? I would be really uncomfortable with a system or a service that was willing to accept that, in the interest of professional boundaries and safety, actually a byproduct of that might need to be that children don't feel truly loved and cared for.
Because then we're just really almost solely institutionalizing care and having it as a process rather than something that's genuinely about helping someone develop and thrive and who are encountering struggle. And I would question, what are we doing if we're not doing that with all of our children? All of our children across the world deserve the same opportunities to thrive and grow and develop.
So, picking up on some comments here, Deirdre Sweeney said that kind of children, they need to know that people care and they're not left alone. And then we go into the subject of touch here as well, and she said a hug can go a long way. And this brings into the subject of touch as well, and about appropriate boundaries and child protection. Christine Connor, so thanks for your comment, Deirdre. And Christine says the one thing we read about this week that I still can't get my head around is the existence of agencies employing a no-touch policy. I fail to understand how carers can reach out to the children in their care if they are effectively armless. And it's a frustration, it's a challenge that certainly I can share with you, Christine. And again, linking this to our earlier discussion, I think organisation, and again, this is going back to, we've got the privilege of sitting here in front of the camera, so we can give our opinion. I think organisations which are trying to justify no-touch policies and talking about how it's in the best interest of children, I think this relates to our earlier discussion. This is about organisations engaging in back government. It's almost like fear of litigation. So you avoid anything, or you think you avoid anything potentially happening by just stopping anybody having any physical contact with kids, and that keeps everybody safe, regardless of how children and young people might experience that.
Because to do so, you can tell we've got fairly strong opinions on this, but I mean, to do so just dehumanises the whole experience. So why don't we just have robots in and they could just substitute it? And I mean, I love that phrase though that Christine has said there. How can they reach out to children in the care if they're effectively armless? Christine, I think I'm going to have to use that from now on. I think that's brilliant. I mean, I think it's a really interesting, thought-provoking way of putting it.
And again, that this whole subject about touch and about how organisations respond to that within this arguably risk-averse culture, we could spend the whole session talking about that. There are another two comments we've got here which probably represent different ends of a scale and a conversation. So I'm going to kind of read them out. So Shirley Scott, Shirley, thanks for your comments. And she finished her comment by saying, maybe some children are too traumatised to ever recover. And by contrast, we'll get Geraldine Johnson. So Geraldine, thanks for your comment also. It is possible to make a vulnerable child whole again. And we touched on this 2 weeks ago, and about the theme of there's always hope, there's always space for growth and development and recovery.
I mean, what we know in terms of the neuroplasticity of how the brain forms, young people have the ability to recover from trauma that they've experienced because neural pathways can grow and they can recover, and with intensive support care and, dare I say it, lots and lots of love in terms of just being able to thrive and develop. So we both absolutely remain entirely optimistic about that.
So I guess then, because I answer your question then, or respond to your comment, Shirley, maybe some children are too traumatised to ever recover. I think we would take the view there's always space for growth and development and recovery. I guess how far people are going to travel is a case by case, scenario by scenario, and to some extent it depends where your starting point is and the experiences, and then how much support and help we can provide children and young people. But I would like to think they're always coming from a kind of strengths-based, optimistic approach, which is there's always a space for growth and development.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thanks for those comments. Before we finish up with Billy's story, there's one other question that I wanted to, and this was coincidental. But so Deirdre Sweeney, Deirdre, you're getting 2 mentions because we did mention one of your earlier comments, but she'd also posted a question as well, and it touches across a number of the themes that we've been talking about. And what Deirdre was asking about was about the rules and regulations, and she's using the examples of kind of school activity, permission slips that we could sign, and then we don't have to let the child wait for kind of social workers, and I guess what she's commenting on is kind of experiences sometimes in some settings we're actually creating systems that they're justified in terms of this is about keeping children safe and it's about putting appropriate checks and balances.
But they get in the road and have the opposite effect of the intended policy.
And they create a bit of bureaucracy, and actually what it prevents is it creates a situation where some children and young people are being prevented from engaging in things and doing things. And again, Deirdre, unfortunately, we're not sitting here with a kind of silver bullet or anything such like. I think, again, similar to my answer to Ria's question is, I think we've got to be constantly raising such issues. We've got to be constantly having the conversations and bringing it back to, if this is truly about the best interest of the children and young people, actually, that doesn't seem to be happening here, because when this gets played out, what's happening is we're denying them opportunities to do X, Y, or Z. And actually, we've got to kind of think about how this is actually operating in practice and who's benefiting from it or not. And is what we are here about, is it about actually denying children and young people the opportunity to engage in things? So, and we can link this into to Billy's story as well, because this we're 4 weeks into Billy's story now. And the course participants have heard a bit more about his engagement with the outreach service and his advocacy worker and some of the activities that he might be involved in there. But no, there's been a number of things going on in Billy's story, and as always, probably this is our 7th run of this course now, the programme, and I think every time we run it, the forums that have got the most feeling are to do with Billy, and so again, Billy's story is obviously a fictional one, but there are, certainly in a UK context, there are thousands of Billys up and down the country. So whilst Billy is a fictional story, that the issues that he's dealing with are 100% real and sadly becoming realer all the time for many families up and down the country just now. So I think it's surprising to us that we see kind of so much feeling coming through and
absolutely, and some really
forums.
Really interesting comments. One there from Gary Brown. Thank you, Gary. Also kind of highlighting again the need to support mum as well, which is encouraging, and the need for him to have that support for someone who's shown an interest in his life and actively listen to him. So again, that's really kind of encouraging to see that kind of level of thought as people are journeying through the course about as they're thinking about how this fits with good supports for vulnerable children.
And actually part of the reason for picking Gary's comment is pleasing to see so many comments where people are recognising the need to support mum as part of the equation, the whole family, and because sometimes, and certain parts of media, etc., I think can be quite quick to jump and blame families and blame parents in certain situations. And it's nice to see that we've got a bunch of participants who are kind of seeing this situation more realistically and more sympathetically, and trying to think about what's going to be in the best interest of Billy and the whole family. So thanks for that comment, Gary. And there's a number of other comments along the kind of same theme. I've picked out a comment from James Graham. James, thanks for your comment. He talks about the adventure camps, etc., and this could have a profound effect on his self-confidence. That links into John Paul's earlier comment about resilience and developing children and young people. Fiona Reid, thanks for your comments. and she comments on Billy feeling responsible for his mum, and this links into this bit about there's a theme about young carers here. We know that we're getting increasing amounts of young carers up in a UK context, up and down the country, and the extra demands that are placed on them, and if we're not aware of that and sensitive to that about the impact that can have on the number of children and young people. And then finally, a comment from Gary Thorne, and he again, probably the reason I picked out Gary's comment is I think it'll link nicely into what we're talking about in 2 weeks' time, because he's talking about, again, in a UK context, the impact of budget cuts and different policies, and about shrinking resources, and about how trying to support families such as the one depicted in Billy's stories becomes all the more challenging. And again, to repeat something we were talking about 2 weeks ago, whatever concerns we might have about Billy and his family, the reality is, in the UK resource context,
down there in terms of appearing on a risk threshold.
And contrast that with the level of concern that we've seen expressed in the forums. But sadly, we know that many cases of this, it will take a crisis to emerge before anything is done. And there was one thing we wanted to draw your attention to this week in a UK context. We just had a report come out this week from the Equality and Human Rights Commission, and it's quite a lengthy report, and they're reflecting on the impact of tax and welfare reforms. But there's just kind of two headline findings from this report that we want to pick out and link back to Billy's story. In a UK context, thinking about tax and income reform, lone parents lose about 15% of their net income in average, and with these coming changes. So what do we know about Billy's family of one parent? And then the next headline, women lose more than men from the reforms at every income level, and overall they're talking about potentially double. So can I think about families such as Billy existing out there, and this is how they've been impacted upon by kind of current policy, and we're not going to go off at a political rant as such, but it's almost like this isn't just us pulling kind of figures out of the sky. This is coming from the Equality and Human Rights Commission about this is the lived reality.
Just highlight again that link with poverty, which is a theme that we will be returning to over the next 2 weeks.
Absolutely, and it'll be a kind of strong theme in our final live stream session in 2 weeks' time. So that's us got to the end of our time. I think we've covered everything that we planned to. So thanks for your contributions on the forum. Well, again, we just finished by encouraging you, keep the conversation going. There might be some things we've said that you agree with, but I'm sure there'll be some things you don't as well. So can keep the conversation going in the forum, and we look forward to talking to you again in 2 weeks' time.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.